Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to Uncivil Law. I hope you're having a great day. And I suppose for a particularly uncivil law today, we have the United States has attacked Venezuela and extradited. Is extradited the right word? I'm not even sure. Acquired its president and transported him to the United States. And so that's a lot of things that apparently just happened. So we're going to watch the address on this and try to figure out what's going on. So I'm going to pull it up. All right. So we're going to watch this address and comment on it. And hopefully I'll have something intelligent to say. This isn't really legal analysis. I guess this is foreign policy analysis at this point. Well, we'll see if I have anything intelligent to say about it. Okay. And the thing doesn't want to cooperate with me. That's just great. That's just the... Hold on. I hopefully can fix this. Talk amongst yourselves. It doesn't want to address the margins. I can't change that. Why can't I? All right, we'll just do it this way. It's not as clean, but I can't. We can do it this way. All right, we can do it this way. All right. This will work, sort of. All right, let's do this.
Okay, thank you very much. This is big stuff. We appreciate you being here. Late last night and early today, at my direction, the United States Armed Forces conducted an extraordinary military operation in the capital.
So we're calling it a military operation? I thought we were calling it a police action. Are we calling it a military operation now? Okay.
Of Venezuela. Overwhelming American military power, air, land, and sea, was used to launch a spectacular assault. And it was an assault like people have not seen since World War II.
That might be a slight overstatement, but it was aggressive, that's for sure.
It was a force against a heavily fortified military fortress in the heart of Caracas to bring outlaw dictator Nicolas Maduro to justice. This was one of the most stunning, effective, and powerful displays of American military might and competence in American history. And if
I mean, I'm not sure about that either. I mean, it wasn't exactly difficult for the United States to achieve this objective. The United States has force supremacy over Venezuela. So, like, you know, bombing their military bases and destroying their bases wasn't exactly the hardest operation the United States has ever pulled off. You know, they're right there, right? And we have better technology than they do. So, you know,
you think about it, we've done some other good ones like the attack on Soleimani, the attack on al-Baghdadi, and the obliteration and decimation of the Iran nuclear sites just recently.
That was a harder
operation
probably
known
by
as
comparison.
Midnight Hammer. All perfectly executed and done. No nation in just a short period of time.
Why is the audio off as he's talking?
All Venezuelan military.
Why is the audio off on the Wall Street Journal? What's up with this?
Okay, thank you very much. This is
Okay, I can't work with this. All right. I have to find a different source. Let's try ABC.
late last night and early today.
All right, that'll work.
At my direction, the United States Armed Forces conducted an extraordinary military operation in the capital of Venezuela. Overwhelming American military power, air, land, and sea, was used to launch a spectacular assault. And it was an assault like people have not seen since World War II. It was a force against a heavily fortified military fortress in the heart of Caracas to bring outlaw dictator Nicolas Maduro to justice. This was one of the most stunning, effective, and powerful displays of American military might and competence in American history. And if you think about it, we've done some other good ones, like the attack on Soleimani, the attack on al-Baghdadi, and the obliteration and decimation of the Iran nuclear sites.
I don't really feel like those examples are comparable. Trying to take out a particular person using a weapons platform designed to basically take out that person is not quite the same thing as what we just did in Venezuela. And yeah, attacking the Iran nuclear sites is a more apt comparison, although our relationship with Iran, yeah, so there's that. Okay.
Just recently, in an operation known as Midnight Hammer, all perfectly executed and done. No nation in the world could achieve what America achieved yesterday, or frankly, in just a short period of time. All Venezuelan military capacities were rendered powerless as the men and women of our military, working with U.S. law enforcement, successfully captured Maduro in the dead of night. It was dark. It
is dark at night.
Lights of Caracas were largely turned off due to a certain expertise that we have. It was dark, and it was deadly.
Dark at night.
But captured
Confirmed.
with his wife, Celia Flores, both of whom now face American justice. Maduro and Flores have been indicted in the Southern District of New York, Jay Clayton, for their campaign of deadly narco-terrorism against the United States and its citizens. I want to thank the men and women of our military who achieved such an extraordinary success overnight with breathtaking speed, power, precision, and competence. You rarely see anything like it. You've seen some raids in this country that didn't go so well. They were an embarrassment. If you look back to Afghanistan, or if you look back to the Jimmy Carter days, they were different days. We're a respected country again, maybe like never before. These highly trained warriors operating in collaboration.
I mean, not to put too fine a point on it, but Jimmy Carter stopped being president in 1981. It was 45 years ago. The special forces of the United States are a little bit more existing than they were in 1980. So it could be that. I mean, just, okay, pressing on.
With U.S. law enforcement, caught them in a very ready position. They were waiting for us. They knew we had many ships out. in the sea were just sort of waiting. They knew we were coming. So they were in what's called a ready position. But they were completely overwhelmed and very quickly incapacitated. If you would have seen what I saw last night, you would have been very impressed. I'm not sure that you'll ever get to see it, but it was an incredible thing to see. Not a single American service member was killed, and not a single piece of American equipment was lost. We had many helicopters, many planes, many people involved in that fight. But think of that, not one piece of military equipment was lost, not one service member was, more importantly, killed. The United States military is the strongest and most fearsome military on the planet by far. With capabilities and skills our enemies can scarcely begin to imagine. We have the best equipment anywhere in the world. There's no equipment like what we have, and you see that even if you just look at the boats. You know, we've knocked out 97% of the drugs coming in by sea. 90%. Each boat kills on average, 25,000 people. We knocked out 97%.
Wait, what? What did he just say?
There's no equipment like what we have, and you see that even if you just look at the boats. You know, we've knocked out 97% and most fearsome military on the planet by far. With capabilities and skills our enemies can scarcely begin to imagine. We have the best equipment anywhere in the world.
Uh-huh.
There's no equipment like what we have, and you see that.
That's true.
Even if you just look at the boats. You know, we've knocked out 97% of the drugs coming in by sea.
Uh-huh.
90%. Each boat kills on average, 25,000 people.
Oh, he meant by the drugs that were coming in. Okay. I was confused. The boats are killing 25. He means by the drugs. Okay. That makes more sense. Fair enough.
We knocked out 97%. And those drugs mostly come from a place called Venezuela. We're going to run the country until such time as we can do a safe, proper, and judicious transition. So we don't want to be involved.
So we're doing regime change now? I thought we weren't doing that anymore. I thought we weren't doing the regime change thing. But we're doing regime change again? Okay. All right.
Involved with having somebody else get in, and we have the same situation that we had for the last long period of years. So we are going to run the country until such time as we can do a safe, proper, and judicious transition. And it has to be judicious, because that's what we're all about. We want peace, liberty, and justice for the great people of Venezuela, and that includes many from Venezuela that are now living in the United States and want to go back to their country. It's their homeland. We can't take a chance that somebody else takes over Venezuela that doesn't have the good of the Venezuelan people in mind. We've had decades of that. We're not going to let that happen. We're there now, and what people don't understand, but they understand as I say this, we're there now, but we're going to stay until such time as the proper transition can take place. So we're going
to... If that's the case, why not just raise the American flag in the Capitol? I mean, let's go all the way. Why not just raise the American flag? All right. Carrying on.
We're going to stay until such time as we're going to run it essentially until such time as a proper transition can take place.
If Venezuela is now part of the United States, does that mean I can like move there and get property on the cheap? I mean, what federal court does Venezuela? What federal court do I appeal to for Venezuela related issues? I don't know. Not sure about that. Okay.
As everyone knows, the oil business in Venezuela has been a bust, a total bust, for a long period of time. They were pumping almost nothing by comparison to what they could have been pumping and what could have taken place. We're going to have our very large United States oil companies, the biggest anywhere in the world, go in, spend billions of dollars, fix the badly broken infrastructure, the oil infrastructure, and start making money for the country.
I can't help noticing that somewhat calls into question our motives. Earlier, he said that the former dictator, Maduro, who we have thoughtfully deposed and brought to the United States for charges, was bad for the Venezuelan people, and they deserve a leader that is good for the Venezuelan people. So we're doing it for the benefit of the Venezuelan people, which doesn't really make sense inherently because we're all about make America great again, which I personally support as a prospect. I think that Trump has this idea right, fundamentally. We can obviously quibble over the details, but fundamentally, I agree with the concept that America should put America first. This is, to me, a non-controversial concept. The American policy should be what benefits the United States, period. And our relationships with any other countries are only in service of that goal. And that's it, right? It's like, what is good for the United States? So originally he was like, okay, we're doing this because the leader is a bad leader and he's bad for the people of Venezuela. Like, well, how's that a U.S. problem? How does solving that benefit the United States? So that was apparently motive number one. Now motive number two is we're doing it for the oil. We're doing it to send in U.S. oil companies to extract that liquid crude. Well, I suppose that benefits the United States. There's that. But then we've conducted a military operation for the purpose of acquiring their resources, which under standard international law doesn't really work. Usually if you're going to attack someone, you need cause belli. You need a cause for war, right? Under standard international law theory, like you need a reason under modern international law to attack a country. They need to do something that poses a threat to you in some way, and that can come in a lot of different flavors. But we're doing it to acquire the oil is not a cause for war. So, there's that. Okay. Pressing on.
And we are ready to stage a second and much larger attack if we need to do so. So we were prepared.
I saw there were some super chats, including from Meet the Lawyer. Don't want to let that go by. Let's see. Link me in, bro. I can't link you in. I'm not using StreamYard. I can't bring you in because I'm using OBS. Sorry, Nate. But thanks for the $19.99. Wish I could, but I'm not using OBS. I have no mechanism to bring you in. I love you, though. Alan Parker for the 20 gift memberships. All good. All right, let's listen to some more of whatever this is.
To do a second wave if we needed to do so. We actually assumed that a second wave would be necessary, but now it's probably not. The first wave, if you'd like to call it that, the first attack was so successful, we probably don't have to do a second, but we're prepared to do a second wave, a much bigger wave, actually. This was pinpoint, but we have a much bigger wave that probably won't have to do.
So we're looking at an invasion. We did a drive-by earlier. I guess that's what we would characterize it. We did a drive-by. Yeah, unclear if we were playing any tunes from the vehicles as we were doing our drive-by, but now you're talking about an invasion with boots on the ground, presumably? Okay. What? All right.
this partnership of Venezuela with the United States of America, a country that everybody wants to be involved with because of what we were able to do and accomplish, will make the people of Venezuela rich, independent, and safe. And it will also make the many, many people from Venezuela that are living in the United States extremely happy. They suffered. They suffered. So much was taken from them. They're not going to suffer anymore.
Again, what is our motive here? It's like this mixed motive thing is really, is our motive humanitarian now? We did it for humanitarian reasons? I don't know, man.
The illegitimate dictator Maduro was the kingpin of a vast criminal network responsible for trafficking colossal amounts of deadly and illicit drugs into the United States. As alleged in the indictment, he personally oversaw the vicious cartel known as Cartel de las Solas, which flooded our nation.
Wait a second. You think that he was overseeing a cartel? Then that would make it state sponsored, which would make the cartel a state actor, which would mean their actions could be read onto the government. So them importing drugs, for example, could be seen as an act of war, which would be your cause belli, I suppose, if you want to believe all the things. So you could actually put all those things together and be like, okay, there is not really a cartel. It looks like a cartel, but it's not really a cartel. What it really is a government-created operation for the purpose, among other things, of bringing illicit drugs that, incidentally, are a violation of international law themselves into the United States, and they're doing it to destabilize us or, for money or whatever, and that's the reason we're doing it, because it's state-sponsored, and therefore that's an act of war, and we're responding to it as a war, which would make the targeting of their boats, incidentally, much more legitimate, right? Because their speedboats, for example, would no longer be speedboats. They'd be military craft. I mean, why not, right? I mean, there's nothing special about what a military boat has to look like. The United States uses boats of all different kinds in the military operations, historically, So it could be a military boat, and then us attacking it would be attacking a military asset, which would be a lot more legitimate as a theory of war, right? We're not bombing some drug runner, we're bombing a military vessel. I mean, you could sell that, or you could try to sell that at least, but he's not doing a very good job of connecting the dots to make that theory work. So, yeah. Don't confuse motives with positive benefits. I don't know what that means. Don't confuse motives with positive benefits. I don't know what that means.
With lethal poison responsible for the deaths of countless Americans, many, many Americans, hundreds of thousands over the years of Americans died because of him. Maduro and his wife will soon face the full might of American justice and stand trial on American soil. Right now they're on a ship. They'll be heading to, ultimately, New York, and then a decision will be made, I assume, between New York and Miami or Florida. But we have...
I mean, presumably you would have jurisdiction anywhere his drugs landed or money passed through, which I assume would cover a lot of territory. So yeah, you have your choice of places. I assume.
People where the overwhelming evidence of their crimes will be presented in a court of law, and I've seen it. I've seen what we have. It's both horrible and breathtaking that something like this could have been allowed to take place. For many years after his term as president of Venezuela expired, Maduro remained in power and waged a ceaseless campaign of violence, terror, and subversion against the United States of America, threatening not only our people, but the stability of the entire region. And you all saw it, in addition to trafficking gigantic.
Okay, I don't understand this. Is the United States recognizing Maduro as the legitimate leader or not? Because that goes that you can't like or pick one, right? If Maduro is a legitimate leader, then he has, by running a cartel, turned the cartel into a state operation. It is a government thing. And so the actions of that cartel can be understood as state action because he's the leader of the government and also the leader of the cartel, so it's a state actor. Cool. All right. So if it's a state actor, then their actions can be viewed as actions of the government. Okay. They're sending boats with their illicit product. We could view that as a military action. Okay. We're bombing them because it's a military thing. And we've taken out the boats because we view them as military. So we're not just attacking boats of some drug runners, who are committing crimes. We're attacking military boats. Okay. And now we've decided that isn't enough. And so we need to kick the whole thing up a notch because we're so pissed and they haven't gotten the memo. So we decided to respond by proportional response by attacking their military assets in Venezuela. And also we've taken his leader to the United States for trial. So you could sell that theory, or you could say, wait a second, he's not a legitimate leader. Wait a second, though. If he's not a legitimate leader, if he's not legitimately the president, then it's not state action anymore, right? I mean, if he was the president, but at some point he stopped being the president because his power was illegitimate, if the United States doesn't recognize him as a leader, then he's just a guy. And we've bombed Venezuela's military to capture a guy who isn't the leader of the military because he's not legitimate. But the military would presumably be legitimate. So we've just committed an act of war against Venezuela because no one in their government authorized any of this stuff. Their government didn't do anything because the president wasn't really present, so he's not legitimate, so it's not government. So their government hasn't done anything to us, and now we're just attacking them without cause. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? It's like we're speaking out of both sides of our mouth here. He's the president. No, he's not the president. It was government sanctioned. No, it's not government sanctioned. It's like you can't really have everything all at the same time, man. Doesn't really make sense.
Gigantic amounts of illegal drugs that inflicted untold suffering and human destruction all over the country, all over in particular the United States. Maduro sent savage and murderous gangs, including the bloodthirsty prison gang Tren de Aragua, to terror.
Yeah, but this is what I'm saying. If Maduro sent Tren de Aragua, or whatever the fuck they're called, is Maduro the leader or not? If Maduro is the legitimate leader of Venezuela, then him sending Tren de Aragua or whatever the fuck is now state action. Fantastic. Tren de Aragua or whatever the fuck they're called is now a governmental actor. And we view that as being authorized and validated by the government. And we view it as an act of war. And we're pissed. And so we're killing everything in sight. And now we've disposed you because we're in a state of war. And we've removed you from the battlefield because we're in a state of war. If he's legitimate. If he's not legitimate, then he's just some guy. He's just a cartel leader. Which, fair enough as to targeting him, I guess. And fair enough as to targeting the cartel, I guess. But how do you get to the Venezuela military? How do you get to them? Because they have nothing to do with this anymore. Because Maduro isn't their leader. Okay. I feel like I'm going around in circles.
Terrorize American communities nationwide, and he did indeed. They were in Colorado. They took over apartment complexes. They cut the fingers of people if they call police. They were brutal, but they're not so brutal now. And I just have to congratulate our military, Pete and everybody, and our National Guard, because the job that they've done, whether it's in Washington, D.C., where we have a totally safe city, where it was one of the most unsafe cities anywhere in the world, frankly, and now we have no crime in Washington, D.C. We haven't had...
Yeah, more drugs come from Mexico or fentanyl's coming from China. Well, that's neither here nor there, incidentally. It doesn't really matter as to that. Whether more drugs are coming from somewhere else is neither here nor there, right? The United States can choose to prosecute targets that are legitimate targets at its pleasure. So this is a slightly silly argument from first principles, right? If a small country, just to like make it simple, if a small country does some small military thing and a bigger country does some big military thing, the United States could, at its pleasure, respond to the small guy with the small thing, but not respond to the big thing with the big guy. Because there might be valid reasons for doing so from US policy perspectives, right? If we're attacked simultaneously by two different countries that are not related, they just happen to be attacking us at the same time, okay? So if we're attacked by two different countries at essentially the same time, but they're completely unrelated to each other, and one of them is a small country that did a small thing, and one of them's a big country with a big thing, and we decide to respond to the small country with the small thing, but not the big country with the big thing, with military force, that's our prerogative, right? They both committed acts of war, and we can respond to them as we please, and we could respond to them, one with the, we're going to break out the war and, kick your ass, and one of them we're going to respond to, something else, and that's at our discretion. So yeah, the fact that more drugs come from Mexico or more drugs come from China is not relevant to Venezuela. I mean, it's only relevant insofar as you think we should also attack Mexico, we should also attack China, which may be, but it doesn't change the legitimacy of what we're doing in Venezuela. The fact that there's more bad doesn't change less bad from being bad. So, I mean, that doesn't really work. Mandrake DCR for $20 said, you say it yourself, he was legitimate. I didn't say he was illegitimate. I was asking, what is the US policy? Like, I didn't say he was illegitimate. I'm asking, like, well, if it's this, then this. I'm like, I don't know. I'm not a foreign policy expert. I don't know whether he's legitimate or not. I'm just saying you got to pick one, right? But if, okay, the military that was following him and providing him services was also not legit. What, the entire military was not legit? That seems like a strange proposition. Legit military won the fake election last time. You're really reaching. So your view, this is a difficult thing to square, but your view is that he's not a legitimate leader, and what would be the Venezuela military isn't really the Venezuela military because it's not really under the control of Venezuela. They're just under the control of this guy who isn't really Venezuela. That seems like a tough proposition to defend. That seems like a difficult proposition to defend, but I guess you could try that route. Yeah. So you're saying that the entirety of what we would consider to be the Venezuela military it's not the Venezuela military. They have bases and troops and helicopters and boats and planes, but they're not really the Venezuela military. Okay. That seems like a tough sell, but you could try that, I guess. All right.
The killing, we had the terrorist attack a few weeks ago. A little bit of a different kind of a threat, but we haven't had a killing in...
When the U.S. occupied Philippines and Puerto Rico, McKinley took over the government. This has been done before. Yeah, I'm not saying that the United States can't overtake a country and administer them. I'm not saying that isn't legitimate in some applications. I'm questioning this particular application. So I haven't, I'm not a history buff, so I can't say off the top of my head, because I'm not a history buff. I can't say whether or not what McKinley did was legitimate or not under U.S. law or international law. Also, of course, at the time, international law was different than it is now, because international law has evolved, like all legal systems have evolved. So in trying to evaluate whether or not what McKinley did was legitimate or not, I'd have to know more about exactly what he did, and I'd have to know more exactly about the posture of law at the time. So that would require a really deep dive analysis to determine whether it was legitimate. But assuming it was legitimate, which I'll grant you for the purposes of this discussion, assuming it was legitimate, that doesn't necessarily mean this is legitimate. Assuming it can be done doesn't mean it can be done here. It doesn't mean it can't be done here either. It just doesn't necessarily read onto it, right? So is there a situation? So if you're asking me the question or implying the question, could the United States conquer a country and run up its flag and administer it? Could that be a legitimate thing for the United States to do? Yes, that could be legitimate for the US to do. There are circumstances in which that would be legitimate. I don't know if it's legitimate here for the reasons I've been talking about, but, you know, whatever.
A long period of time, 6-7 months. We used to have two, on average, 2 a week in Washington, our capital. We don't have that anymore. The restaurants are opening. Everyone's happy. They're walking their daughters. They're walking their children, their wives. They walk to restaurants. Restaurants are opening all over Washington, D.C. So I want to thank the National Guard. I want to thank our military. And I want to thank law enforcement.
An earlier question I missed. If Maduro was illegitimate, why couldn't the government support the legitimate party? Yeah, I mean, that would presumably be what the United States would do. And not clear that we did that. But then the Venezuelan vice president is the leader now. Yeah, I don't know how their system of government works in terms of who becomes president or not by their own laws. I'm not an expert on the laws of Venezuela. And since they're not a Commonwealth country, I don't have enough background to even be able to speculate. We don't share a legal system, so I don't know. Yeah. Thank you, Michael, for becoming an uncivilian.
Been amazing, and they should do it with more cities. We're doing it, as you know, and we're doing it in Memphis, Tennessee, right now, and crime is down. We've just sort of started a few weeks ago, but crime is down now 77%. And the governor of Louisiana called, great person, and he wanted us to help him, as you know, in a certain very nice part of Louisiana, and we have done that. It was a rough section, and we have crime down. I understand it's down to almost nothing already after 2.5 weeks. New Orleans, it's down to almost nothing, and we've only been there for 2.5 weeks. Can't imagine why governors wouldn't want us to help. We also helped, as you know, in Chicago, and crime went down a little bit there. We did a very small help because we had no working ability with the governor. The governor was a disaster in the middle.
Who are those two other guys to the president's right? I don't recognize them. I mean, that's the Secretary of State, but who's Baldy? Who's Baldy on the president's far right, and who's guy in red tie? Who are these people? Anyone know? Stephen Miller? How did Stephen Miller get to be part of this party? Who's the guy in the red tie? No one knows who red tie guy is. That's encouraging. All right, pressing on.
A little bit there. We did a very small help because we had no.
Oh, red tie is the CIA. Okay. All right. That, I guess that makes sense. Okay. How did Stephen Miller get to be part of this party, though? Everyone else makes sense. CIA. How'd Stephen Miller get to be in this thing?
We had no working ability with the governor. The governor was a disaster, and the mayor was a disaster. But it knocked down crime. But we're pulling out of there when they need us. We'll know. You'll know. You'll be writing about it. And likewise, Los Angeles, where we saved Los Angeles early on, where the head of the police department made a statement that if the federal government didn't come in, we would have lost Los Angeles. That's long after the fires. That's when they had the riots in Los Angeles. We did a great job. Got no credit for it whatsoever, but that's okay. It doesn't matter. We don't need the credit. but we'll be pulling out when they need us. They'll call, or we'll go back if we have to. We'll go back. But we did a great job in various cities. But the place that we're very proud of is Washington, D.C., because it's our nation's capital. We took it from being a crime-ridden mess to being one of the safest cities in the country. But the gangs are...
Oh, Stephen Miller is the Homeland Security Advisor. Okay, I was confused as his role. All right. Yeah, Deputy Chief of Staff for Policy and Homeland Security Advisor. Okay, that makes more sense. All right, Baldy being here makes sense. All right, fair enough.
They sent, raped, tortured, and murdered American women and children. They were in all of the cities I mentioned, Tren de Aragua. And they were sent by Maduro to terrorize our people, and now Maduro will never again be able to threaten an American citizen or anybody from Venezuela. There will no longer be threats. For years I've highlighted the stories of those innocent Americans whose lives...
I don't know if I'd go that far. I'm not really sure that this is going to do wonders for our relationship with Venezuela. I don't foresee it going great in the foreseeable future, but I could be wrong. 1999 from Damien, Texas 1. The real question is, what are the options? Okay. Isolation, keep doing what we're doing, and do not wish to be done. I have friends that have died because of drug coming across the border. I'm sick of this. Well, I mean, yeah, fair enough. I think if your question is what should we do about the cartels, you know, I have no problem with the United States conducting a targeted operation against the cartels, you know, because that's not targeting the country in question. You know, they're extra legal assets, you know, extra legal people. And we're, you know, if we want to go send, you know, tier 1 operators to go take out the cartels, if we want to make Clear and Present Danger a documentary, except, you know, without the betrayal of our troops part, you know, I'm cool with that. So if let's make Clear and Present Danger a documentary, except without the, you know, the betrayal of our troops part. That's fine by me. I have no problem with that. But this is a little bit more extensive than, you know, that. So, yeah.
We're so heartlessly robbed by this.
They're celebrating in the streets. Yeah.
Organization, really one of the worst. One of the worst. They say the worst. Americans like 12-year-old Jocelyn Nungary from Houston. Beautiful Jocelyn Nungary. What happened to her? They, as you know, they kidnapped, assaulted, and murdered by Tren de Aragua animals. They murdered Jocelyn and left her dead under the bridge. There was a bridge.
And yeah, if we could make up our mind about whether Maduro is the legitimate leader of Venezuela or not, that would be really great. If he's the legitimate leader of Venezuela and Tren de Aragua, or whatever they're called, is at his direction, then I have no problem viewing that as a state-sponsored thing and viewing it as military or paramilitary, and we're being attacked. And in that case, let's go attack them back. That's fine. But we can't quite make up our mind about whether he's legitimate or not, because kind of want to seem to have it both ways. Yeah, yeah.
A bridge that will never be the same to so many people after seeing what happened. As I've said many times, the Maduro regime emptied out their prisons, sent their worst and most violent monsters into the United States to steal American lives. And they came from mental institutions and insane asylums. They came from prisons and jails. The reason I say both, they sound similar. Actually, prisons, a little bit more hostile, a little bit tougher. A mental institution isn't as tough as an insane asylum, but we got them both. They sent from their mental institutions. They sent from...
Biden wasn't legitimate? Okay, so let's explore this to test your logic. Okay, so if Maduro wasn't legitimate, and therefore the military that followed him was illegitimate because they weren't really the military of Venezuela, because they were following someone who wasn't really the leader, If that's your view, then if you take that to the United States, if Biden isn't really the leader of the United States, then the military that followed him, which incidentally would be all of it, isn't also really the U.S. military, because that would be the logic flow, right? If Maduro is not really the leader, and so the military that follows him isn't really the military because he's not really legitimate, so the military that follows him can't be really legitimate. So our attack on that military is not an attack on Venezuela because it's not really Venezuela because they're following someone who isn't the legitimate leader. If you take all that logic and you import it back, you would have to say that Biden, since he isn't the legitimate leader, the military that follows him, which would be basically all of it, isn't really the military of the United States. And so any attack against the military during Biden's term would not have been an attack against the United States because it's not really the military because they're following someone who isn't really the leader. So all those attacks that occurred against military assets during Biden's tenure were not attacks against the United States. Just to keep the logic consistent. I mean, that would have to be true, right? 1999 from Damien, Texas. Respect for engaging with me, but a documentary from president isn't what I voted for. Documentary. When did I say documentary? What the hell are you talking about? A documentary from the president? What the hell? When did I say documentary? What are we talking about? What are we talking about? I'm very confused. Moving on.
From their jails, prisons, they were drug dealers. They were drug kingpins. They sent everybody bad into the United States. But no longer. And we have now a border where nobody gets through. In addition, Venezuela unilaterally seized and so.
Someone said, you said if you want to turn it into a documentary of a movie, then you're okay with that. Oh, no, you misunderstood. Oh, no, you misunderstood completely what I said. Oh, yeah, no, you misunderstood what I said. I said if we wanted to turn clear and present danger into reality, but leaving out the betraying our troops part, I'd be okay with that. Yeah, that's what I said. In the movie Clear, did you not see the movie Clear and Present Danger? In the movie Clear and Present Danger, the American president decides to attack a bunch of cartel members because he got pissed his friend died. His friend was killed by the cartel, but whatever. He decided to attack a whole bunch of cartel members by sending in basically effectively special forces, by sending in small groups of military people to go into the country. I think it was Colombia, and attack their assets, using small targeted strikes. And so I said, I'd be okay with doing that. I'd be okay with doing that for real. Let's actually do that. That'd be great. And then also in the movie, because it became politically inconvenient, the president of the United States ordered the Pentagon or whatever to cut off all the communications, cut comms from the troops and leave them hanging. So he betrayed the troops and left them hanging. So I said we could make clear and present danger real, except for the betraying our troops part. I didn't like that. I didn't like that part of the movie. So it's we could actually do that for real, except the betraying our troops part. I wasn't saying the president should make a documentary. How did you misunderstand what I was saying? How did you take what I was saying and saying the president should make a movie? How'd you get that? How'd you get that out of what I was trying to say? I'm very confused right now. I'm deeply, deeply confused. Let's take this work of fiction and make it fact, but not this part. I'm confused. I don't understand. What are we doing over here? What are we doing over here? I don't get it.
Stole American oil, American assets, and American platforms, costing us billions and billions of dollars. They did this a while ago, but we never had a president that did anything about it. They took all of our property. It was our property. We built it. And we never had a president that decided.
Someone has to tell me, did I just not speak clearly? I mean, you guys are watching me. Did I not speak clearly, or was I somehow vague, or did I somehow trip over my words? So it could, because I'm trying to think, man, and I thought I expressed this idea fairly clearly. Apparently, there was some confusion because apparently, at least one guy thought I was suggesting the president should create a documentary or something. I don't know how people got that out of what I said. I'm very, very confused. Did I not speak clearly? Am I stumbling over my words? What is going on right now? I'm very confused.
I didn't do anything about it. Instead, they fought wars that were 10,000 miles away. We built Venezuela oil industry with American talent, drive, and skill, and the socialist regime stole it from us during those previous administrations, and they stole it through force. This constituted one of the largest thefts of American property in the history of our country. Considered the largest theft of property in the history of our country. Massive oil infrastructure was taken like we were babies, and we didn't do anything about it. I would have done something about it. America will never allow foreign powers to rob our people or drive us back into and out of our own hemisphere. That's what they did. Furthermore, under the now deposed dictator Maduro, Venezuela was increasingly hosting foreign adversaries in our region and acquiring menacing offensive weapons that could threaten U.S. interests and lives. And they used those weapons last night. Potentially in league with the cartels operating along our border. All of these actions were in gross violation of the core principles of American foreign policy, dating back more than 2 centuries. And not anymore. All the way back, it dated to the Monroe Doctrines.
Wow, old school.
The Monroe Doctrine is a big deal, but we've superseded it by a lot, by a real lot. They now call it the Monroe Document. I don't know. It's
no one calls it that. I want to find one publication that called it the Don Road Doctrine before today. That is not a thing. You are making that up.
Monroe Doctrine. We sort of forgot about it. It was very important, but we forgot about it. We don't forget about it anymore. Under our new national security strategy, American dominance in the Western Hemisphere will never be questioned again. Won't happen. So just in
I don't think about
decades.
I think there may be many questions relating to the United States in the Western Hemisphere. I think that there will be many questions, some of them coming from the right wing, such as myself. Like, what are we doing here? How is this America first? What exactly is our motive here? Is it drugs? Is it to save the Venezuelan people from themselves? Is it the oil? How is it? Are we doing nation building? I thought we weren't doing nation building anymore. I have questions from the right wing. Is this making America great again? How? What are we? Yeah, I have questions. I have right wing questions. I don't know, man. How's this fully compatible with U.S.? How's this fully compatible with international law? Does the logic work when we flip it around? That's always a good test for me. I like that. That's always a good test because that's why I ask the questions the way I do. It's like, does it work if we flip everything on its head? Right? You just flip everything and see, does it still work? That's how you know if you're being consistent. It's one of the ways of being consistent, right? So it's like, oh, okay, their leader's not legitimate. Therefore, their military is not legitimate. Oh, okay. Oh, wait a second. You said Biden wasn't legitimate. Well, that means our military isn't legitimate. Like, does it work the other way around? Or are we special pleading over here, right? It's like, I see some issues over here from the right. I don't know, man. I don't know.
Other administrations have neglected or even contributed to these growing security threats in the Western Hemisphere. Under the Trump administration, we are reasserting American power in a very powerful way in our home region. And our home region is very different than it was just a short while ago. The future will be, and we did this in my first term. We had great dominance in my first term, and we have far greater dominance right now. Everyone's coming back to us. The future will be determined by the ability to protect commerce and territory and resources that are core to national security. These are core to our national security.
What is?
Just like tariffs are, they've made our country rich, and they've made our national security stronger than ever before. But these are the iron laws that have always determined global power. And we're going to keep it that way. We will secure our borders. We will stop the terrorists. We will crash the cartels. And we will defend our citizens against all threats, foreign and domestic. Other presidents may have lacked the courage or whatever to defend America. But I will never allow terrorists and criminals to operate with impunity against the United States. This extremely successful operation should serve as warning to anyone who would threaten American sovereignty or endanger American lives. Very importantly, the embargo on all Venezuelan oil remains in full effect. The American Armada remains poised in position, and the United States retains all military options until United States demands have been fully met and fully satisfied. All political and military figures in Venezuela should understand what happened to Maduro can happen to them, and it will happen to them if they aren't just fair, even to their people. The dictator and terrorist, Maduro, is finally gone in Venezuela. People are free. They're free again. It's been a long time for them, but they're free. America is a safer nation. This morning, it's a prouder nation this morning because it didn't allow this horrible person and this country that was doing very bad things to us. It didn't allow it to happen. And the Western Hemisphere is right now a much safer place to be. So I want to thank everybody for being here. I want to thank General Raisin Cain. He's fantastic. Man.
Raisin Cain? Like the chicken? Okay.
And I've worked with a lot of generals. I worked with some I didn't like. I worked with some I didn't respect. I worked with some that just weren't good. But this guy is fantastic. I watched last night one of the most precise attacks on sovereignty. I mean, it was an attack for justice. And I'm very proud of him, and I'm very proud of our Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, who I'm going to ask to say a few words. Thank you very much.
Mr. President, can you explain how the U.S. will run Venezuela?
Well, thank you, Mr. President. Finally, a commander-in-chief the world respects and the American people deserve. And as the President said, words...
Okay, I do have to say, I do appreciate the Secretary of Defense's drip. I do like that American flag handkerchief and the tie. And although I'm not normally a fan of such things, I can even get behind the sort of light striped shirt because it's kind of subtle. And that suit looks good, man. And the haircut looks good too. He's doing some GQ shit, and I'm here for it, man.
Can barely capture the bravery and the power and the precision of this historic operation. A massive joint military and law enforcement raid flawlessly executed by the greatest Americans our country has to offer.
I wonder what kind of hair gel he uses or hair product he uses. I have fashion questions. I'd like to know what kind of hair product he uses. If he uses any sort of skin moisturizer.
American warriors are second to none. The best in the world and the best of our country. What all of us witnessed last night was sheer guts and grit, gallantry, and glory of the American warrior.
Wow, you got that alliteration going. The 4G words. Excellent.
I'm simply humbled by such men, and I tip my hat to our chairman, Dan Raisin Cain, and all those Americans who stood watch last night. Our warriors are the elite of America, and
oh, Raisin Cain is the chairman of the Joint Chiefs? That's even more hilarious. Okay. That's funny.
Again, President Trump has your back. No other country on planet Earth, and it's not even close, could pull this kind of operation off. And no other president
That's
has
true.
ever shown this kind of leadership.
I mean, that's true. He's not wrong. The problem for basically every other country on the face of the earth is force projection. Yeah, the United States stands alone on force projection. Yeah, there's no other country that could pull this off. Yeah, not really. Yeah, it doesn't hurt when you're spending more on your military than like the next 8 countries combined. So yeah, the US can do force projection. No one else can do force projection. No one comes even close. Yeah. The entire rest of the world combined can't really do force projection. They just don't they just don't have the assets and means to do it. They don't have the resources. They don't have the facilities to do it. So yeah, we're a superpower through and through. We got that going for us. That's true. Yep.
Courage, and resolve. The most powerful combination the world has ever seen. As the president said, our adversaries remain on notice. America can project our will anywhere, anytime.
Pretty much.
The coordination, the stealth, the lethality, the precision, the very long arm of American justice, all on full display in the middle of the night. Nicolas Maduro had his chance, just like Iran had their chance, until they didn't and until he didn't. He effed around and found out.
Wow.
President Trump is deadly serious.
He effed around and he found out. And he didn't actually use the swear. I'm disappointed. I'm disappointed. That's a good line. Excellent.
Serious about stopping the flow of gangs and violence to our country. Deadly serious about stopping the flow of drugs and poison to our people. Deadly serious about getting back the oil that was stolen from us. And deadly serious about reestablishing American deterrence and dominance in the Western Hemisphere. This is about the safety.
He really loves that alliteration, deterrence and dominance, and the 4 Gs. Yeah, it's a little much. I think. Okay.
Security, freedom, and prosperity of the American people. This is America first.
Is it?
This is peace through strength. And the United States War Department is proud to help deliver it. Welcome to 2026, and under President Trump,
Welcome to 2026 has never sounded more threatening, to be honest. I'm not sure I'm feeling it right now.
America is back. I'd like to welcome now our chairman, Chairman Raisin Kane, to give a few more details about the operation. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Thank you, Mr. President, and good morning. Last night, on the order of the President of the United States and in support of a request from the Department of Justice, as the President said, the United States military conducted an apprehension mission in Caracas, Venezuela.
Upon the request of the Department of Justice? The Department of Justice is requesting military help? I have questions. Okay.
To bring to justice 2 indicted persons, Nicolas and Cecilia Maduro. This operation, known as Operation Absolute Resolve, was discreet, precise.
Absolute Resolve? Really? I don't like that name at all. $9.99 from Michelle8190. VE has advanced voting systems. When Maduro won, no evidence was proved he actually won. National Electoral Council couldn't verify one. Everyone was told to shut up and go to jail. Yeah, fair enough. I don't know the history of how he came to power or his elections. I don't know the history of that thing. And that's slightly neither here nor there as to whether or not the United States recognizes him as legitimate or not. You know, whether or not his own people recognize him as legitimate and, you know, whether or not we view them as legitimate is somewhat neither here nor there. Like, the United States has the right to recognize or not any government in the world, you know, like which China is real China, for example, right? So like we have the independent power to make the determination for ourselves. So I don't really know how he did or did not come to power, whether the US does or does not view that as legitimate for the purposes of its own relationship is independent of that. You know, it's because it's like it's just our call of who we do or do not treat with, to use an old school diplomatic term, right? Who do we treat with? We get to make that decision. So as do they, for that matter. So, but I don't know the history of it. So fair enough. Thanks for the super chat. Midnight Hammer? No, Midnight Hammer was the Iran thing. Yeah, Midnight Hammer was the Iran thing. This is whatever bullshit he just said, unquestioned resolve or whatever. It's like, Midnight Hammer is a good name, right? It happened at midnight. We're doing a little hammering. That's a good name. Driving some nails. That's a good name. Unstoppable resolve for what he just came up with. It's like,
And conducted during the darkest hours of January 2nd, and was the culmination of months of planning and rehearsal, an operation that frankly only the United States military could undertake. What I'd like to do this morning is talk to you through some of the preparation and the details without compromising any of our tactics, techniques, and procedures. There is always a chance that we'll be tasked to do this type of mission again. Our interagency work began months ago.
I could take a pretty reasonable guess what our tactics and strategy looked like. Yeah, I could take a pretty reasonable guess. Yeah, Lord.
Built on decades of experience of integrating complex air, ground, space, and maritime operations. While the past 2 decades have honed the skills of our special operations forces, this particular mission required every component of our joint force, with soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, and Guardians working in unison with our intelligence agency partners and law enforcement teammates in an unprecedented operation. We leveraged unmatched.
By the way, I just wanted to say I appreciate you guys being here and spending a little time with me. This is fun. I hope you're having fun too. It's all good. Happy New Year, by the way. I hope all of you had a fun, happy New Year. It's exciting-ish. It's all fun. All good. So, we're having a good day. Some of my videos have been doing very well recently. That's been nice. So, that internal affairs video in particular did way better traffic than I expected. When I posted that, I kind of thought it was, I didn't really think it was very good. And now it's got like 300,000 views. It's like, what the fuck? I don't understand the algorithm apparently, but that's okay. I keep trying. And then we got ourselves a lifting mock meet in 10 days, which I'm excited about. It'll be interesting to see what 3 months of work has enabled. I'm looking forward to it.
Intelligence capabilities and our years of experience in hunting terrorists. And we could not have done this mission without the incredible work by various intelligence agencies, including the CIA, NSA, and NGA. We watched, we waited, we prepared, we remained patient and professional. This mission was meticulously planned, drawing lessons from decades of missions over the last many years, many missions over these last many years. This was an audacious operation that only
it was audacious. I'll give it that.
Could do.
He said that before. I remember.
Precision and integration within our joint force. And the word integration does not explain the sheer complexity of such a mission.
I believe that too.
Action so precise, it involved more than 150 aircraft launching across the Western Hemisphere in close coordination, all coming together in time and place to layer effects for a single purpose: to get an interdiction force into downtown Caracas while maintaining the element of tactical surprise.
Yep.
Failure of one component of this well-oiled machine would have endangered the entire mission, and
Probably.
failure is never an option for America's joint force. Those in the
I mean, failure has to be an option because unfortunately we can't always succeed. So you got to have plan B and C, and then, figure out what you're going to do when it all goes to hell. So, but okay.
air over Caracas last night were willing to give their lives for those on the ground and in the helicopters. Let me talk a little bit about the preparation. After months of work by our intelligence teammates to find Maduro and understand how he moved, where he lived, where he traveled, what he ate, what he wore, what were his pets, in early December, our force was set.
Can we find out more about what he wore? I'm interested in the fit of Maduro. Got to get those fashion tips, man.
Pending a series of aligned events. Key was choosing the right day to minimize the potential for civilian harm and maximize.
Also, this is just a thing that bothers me, and maybe some military people can tell me why it doesn't bother them, or they can tell me to piss off. But like with all the ribbons that, some of these people have, and I think, more power to them because I'm sure they earn them. But I don't like how the jacket conceals some of the ribbons. Like, you can't see some of the ribbons. And he probably has a ribbon there that's completely concealed. And that just doesn't feel fair. I mean, he's earned all those ribbons and you can't even see what some of them are, man. Because his jacket is covering them. I don't know what they need to do. They need to refigure the ribbons, or they need to like put them on top of the lapel, or I don't know, man. It just doesn't feel fair. Am I alone on this? Does it bother anyone else? Do people in the military want to tell me to piss off? I don't know what I'm talking about. What's going on here? Please help me.
The element of surprise and minimize the harm to the indicted personnel, so as the president said, they could be brought to justice. And as the president said earlier today, weather in Venezuela is always a factor this time of the year. And over the weeks through Christmas and New Year's, the men and women of the United States military sat ready, patiently waiting for the right triggers to be met and the president to order us into action. Last night, the weather broke just enough, clearing a path that only the most skilled aviators in the world could maneuver through. Ocean, mountain, low cloud ceilings, but when tasked with a mission, this organization...
The shoulder stars are important. Yeah, I mean, fair. I guess you can see his rank. Good times.
Does not quit. At 10:46 p.m. Eastern Time last night, the president ordered the United States military to move forward with this mission. He said to us, and we appreciate it, Mr. President, good luck and Godspeed. And those words were transmitted to the entire joint force. Over the course of the night, aircraft began launching from 20 different bases on land and sea across the Western Hemisphere. In total, more than 150 aircraft.
I'm also not really a fan of the circular devices on the uniform. I assume one is because of Joint Chiefs of Staff, but I don't know what the other, like, these large buttons are. And I'm not really a fan of that aesthetic either. I have some notes for the uniform, if anyone's interested. Also, do we really need US on the uniform? Were we confused by that in some way? I guess someone might be. Okay.
Aircraft, bombers, fighters, intelligence, reconnaissance, surveillance, rotary wing were in the air last night. Thousands and thousands of hours of experience were airborne. Our youngest crew member was 20, and our oldest crew member was 49, and there's simply no match.
$20 from Caddy Corner. Thank you very much for that generous super chat. I do appreciate your generosity. It helps the channel. You guys have been very generous today on the super chats, and I appreciate that. I really do. Thank you. I feel loved.
For American military might. As the night began, the helicopters took off with the extraction force, which included law enforcement officers, and began their flight into Venezuela at 100 feet above the water. As they approached Venezuelan shores, the United States began layering different.
Schwarzkopf, yeah, I liked Schwarzkopf's fatigue, and Schwarzkopf did the double wrist. He double wristed his watches, which I respect. You gotta have two watches, Schwarzkopf. I'm like, yeah, man, I hear you, man. Gotta have two watches. Gotta flex that fit, man. Schwarzkopf was cool, man. I always liked that when he gave a speech at, I don't know where it was. It might have been at like West Point or something, but there was a speech he gave at West Point, I think, or something like that. And there was like a little Q&A at the end. And I think like one of the cadets stood up and's like, Schwarzkopf, would really appreciate you being here. Will you have a beer with me? Or I'd like to invite you for a beer. And Schwarzkopf's like, well, we do have something right after this, but I think we have time for a beer. And like everyone, lost their shit, as they do. What a great little moment that it was. Like, it's like, yeah, from cadet to, Stormin' Norman, would you have a beer with me? Sure. You gotta love it, man. What a great guy. I miss him.
Different effects provided by Spacecom, Cybercom, and other members of the interagency to create a pathway. Overhead, those forces were protected by aircraft from the United States Marines, the United States Navy, the United States Air Force, and the Air National Guard. The force included F-22s, F-35s, F-18s.
Oh, and then that, I don't know why it reminds me of this. But there was a cadet who I think is Air Force back in the day. So this is on Snopes. There was a cadet who was pissy because the new commandant, I don't know if that's the right name for the head of the Air Force Academy. I'm going to go with commandant. The new commandant was a woman, and he wrote a letter. This student, this student wrote a letter to someone like the Joint Chiefs, bitching about it. This is like, who does this, right? This military student has a new female commanding officer, and he wrote a letter to the Joint Chiefs bitching about it. And he got a letter back, which was like, maybe you want to rethink this, which seemed like, a really soft way of, but yeah, that in the history of bad decisions, man, that yeah, not really great.
EA-18s, E-2s, B-1 bombers, and other support aircraft, as well as numerous remotely piloted drones. As the force began to approach Caracas, the Joint Air Component began dismantling and disabling the air defense systems in Venezuela, employing weapons to ensure the safe passage of the helicopters into the target area. The goal of our air component was, and always will be to protect the helicopters and the ground force and get them to the target and get them home. As the force crossed the last point of high terrain where they'd been hiding in the clutter, we assessed that we had maintained totally the element of surprise. As the helicopter force ingressed towards the objective at low level, we arrived at Maduro's compound at 1:01 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, or 2:01 a.m. Caracas local time, and the apprehension force descended into Maduro's compound and moved with speed, precision, and discipline towards their objective, and isolated the area to ensure the safety and security of the ground force while apprehending the indicted persons. On arrival into the target area, the helicopters came under fire, and they replied with that fire with overwhelming force in self-defense. One of our aircraft was hit but remained flyable, and as the President said earlier today, all of our aircraft came home, and that aircraft remained flyable during the rest of the mission.
Nice.
As the operation unfolded at the compound, our air and ground intelligence teams provided real-time updates to the ground force, ensuring those forces could safely navigate the complex environment without unnecessary risk. The force remained protected by overhead tactical aviation. Maduro and his wife, both indicted, gave up and were taken into custody by the Department of Justice, assisted by our incredible U.S. military with professionalism and precision, with no loss of U.S. life.
I guess that means we don't have to treat him as a POW then. Untangling this on legal issues is going to be interesting. Yeah, that's going to be interesting. I think in the end, he'll probably be tried and convicted and probably sent to ADX. But there will be some interesting wrangling for a while, I would imagine. Yeah. Okay. The lawyers on this are going to have an interesting time for the foreseeable future.
Life. After securing the indicted persons, the force began to prep for departure. Helicopters were called in to exfiltrate the extraction force, while fighter aircraft and remotely piloted.
Yeah, you guys say not a war operation, but I don't know that you can just. I don't know that you can just, do a Jedi mind trick. This is not the war operation you're looking for. I think there might be some disputes over whether or not it's a war operation, and I could see that being a very entangled issue that could be incredibly complex. Yeah, it could be fun. Yeah.
Aircraft provided overhead coverage and suppressive fire. There were multiple self-defense engagements as the force began to withdraw out of Venezuela. The force successfully exfiltrated and returned to their afloat launch bases, and the force was over the water at 3:29 a.m. Eastern Standard Time with indicted persons on board. And both Maduro and his wife were embarked aboard the USS Iwo Jima.
They were embarked. I love that way that sounds. They were embarked. Yeah, I suppose that's one way to put it. Much like people from Africa were embarked on ships towards the United States.
In closing, what we've witnessed today is a powerful demonstration of America's joint force. We think, we develop, we train, we rehearse, we debrief, we rehearse again and again, not to get it right, but to ensure that we cannot get it wrong.
Isn't that the same thing? Whatever.
Our jobs are to integrate combat power so when the order comes, we can deliver overwhelming force at the time and the place of our choosing against any foe anywhere in the world. I am immensely proud today of our joint force and filled with gratitude to represent them here today. There is simply no mission too difficult for these incredible professionals and the families that stand by them and support them. As we stand here this morning, our forces remain in the region at a high state of readiness, prepared to project power, defend themselves, and our interests in the region. This operation is a testament to the dedication and unwavering commitment to justice and our resolve to hold accountable those who threaten peace and stability. In closing, I want to express my heartfelt gratitude to the brave men and women who executed this mission. Their courage and tireless commitment to our nation are what makes us strong. Thank you, Mr. Secretary, and thank you, Mr. President.
Well, I don't have much to add to what you've heard now, other than the following points. Nicolas Maduro was indicted in 2020 in the United States. He is not the legitimate president of Venezuela. That's not just us saying it. The first Trump administration, the Biden administration, the second Trump administration, none of those three recognized him. He's not recognized by the European Union and multiple countries around the world. He is a fugitive of American justice with a $50 million reward, which I guess we saved $50 million. And
We should make sure.
yeah, exactly. But
Don't let anybody claim it. Nobody deserves it but us.
but I want to be clear about one thing. Nicholas
Is Trump going to try to claim the reward? That'd be good. They're going to claim the $50 million. Lol. That'd be really sad if he tried. Oh my God. Let's move on.
Maduro had multiple opportunities to avoid this. He was provided multiple very, very, very generous offers and chose instead to act like a wild man, chose instead to play around. And the result is what we saw tonight. The other message here is the following. You have a guy, like many people around the world, they like to play games. You have a guy who decides he's going to invite Iran into his country, is going to, do the confiscation of American oil companies, is going to flood our country with gang members, is going to take Americans prisoner and try to hold them for hostage and trade them like he was able to do with the Biden administration. Basically likes to play games all this time and thinks nothing's going to happen. And I hope what people now understand is that we have a president. The 47th president of the United States is not a game player. When he tells you that he's going to do something, when tells you he's going to address a problem, he means it. He actions it. I can tell you, I've watched this process now for 14, 15 years, been around it. Everybody talks. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. When I get there, we're going to do this. We're going to take. This is a president of action. Like, I don't understand yet how they haven't figured this out. And now, if you don't know, now you know. Because this is the way it's going to play out. And I think people need to understand that this is not a president that just talks and does letters and press conferences. And, if he says he's serious about something, he means it. And this is something that was a direct threat to the national interest of the United States. And the president addressed it. This is a president of peace, by the way. I told you what I just said earlier. This guy had multiple opportunities to find his way somewhere else and figure out another. He could have been living somewhere else right now, very happy. But instead, he wanted to play big boy. And so now,
Did they offer to put him up on a beach resort somewhere? Because I'm also interested in that offer. I don't know if they're making the offer to anybody, but if the offer was we'll give you a nice house and $20 million and nice little beach property or something, I'm available for that deal. I'll change my name to McMaduro if it helps. I'm open to possibilities here. Give me a call.
he's got other sets of problems on his hands. And but I think the message here should be for the world. Look, the president doesn't go out looking for people to pick fights with. He's not generally wants to get along with everybody. We'll talk and meet with anybody, but don't play games. Don't play games with this president's in office, because it's not going to turn out well. And so I hope that I guess that lesson was learned last night, and we hope it'll be instructive moving forward.
Is that a message for Cuba?
Mr. President.
Mr. President. Mr. President.
Mr. President. Mr. President. Mr. President.
You said that the U.S. is going to run Venezuela. So who's in power right now?
Well, we're going to be running it with a group, and we're going to make sure it's run properly. We're going to rebuild the oil infrastructure, which will cost billions of dollars. It'll be paid for by the oil companies directly. They will be reimbursed for what they're doing, but it's going to be paid. And we're going to get the oil flowing the way it should be. As you know, it was just a minor flow. It was actually a minor flow for what they have. But we're going to run it properly, and we're going to make sure the people of Venezuela are taken care of. We're going to make sure the people that were forced out of Venezuela by this thug are also taken care of.
Mr. President. Mr. President.
Mr. President.
Mr. President.
President, does the U.S. running the country mean that U.S. troops will be on the ground? How will that work?
Well, you know, they always say boots on the ground. Oh, so we're not afraid of boots on the ground if we have to have. We had boots on the ground last night at a very high level, actually. We're not afraid of it. We don't mind saying it. But we're going to make sure that that country is run properly. We're not doing this in vain. This is a very dangerous attack. This is an attack that could have gone very, very badly. Could have gone very badly. We could have lost a lot of people last night. We could have lost a lot of dignity. We could have lost a lot of equipment. The equipment is less important, but we could have lost a lot. And we're going to make sure that this is proper. We're there now. We're ready to go again if we have to. We're going to run the country right. It's going to be run very judiciously, very fairly. It's going to make a lot of money. We're going to give money to the people. We're going to reimburse people that were taken advantage of. We're going to take care of everybody. It's very important. We couldn't let them get away with it. You know, they stole our oil. We built that whole industry there. and they just took it over like we were nothing. And we had a president that decided not to do anything about it. So we did something about it. We're late, but we did something about it. Yeah, please.
Mr. President, can you explain the exact mechanism by which you're going to run the country? Are you going to designate a U.S. official to coordinate?
It's
Can
all
you just
it's all
unpack
being
that?
done right now. We're designating people. We're talking to
Who
people. We're
specifically?
designating various people, and we're going to let you know who those people are.
Mr. President.
What's the group you mentioned that would run Venezuela?
Well, it's largely going to be, for a period of time, the people that are standing right behind me. We're going to be running it. We're going to be bringing it back. It's a dead, I talk about a dead country. A year and a half ago, we were a dead country. Now we're the hottest country anywhere in the world. We're a country doing better than any country anywhere in the world. And it required leadership. Venezuela has a lot of bad people in there, a lot of bad people that shouldn't be leading. We're not going to take a chance that one of those people take over for Maduro. So you can look at, and others, we have fantastic people, including people in the military. So we're going to have a group of people running it until such time as it can be put back on track, make a lot of money for the people, and give people a great way of life, and also reimbursement for people in our country that were forced out of Venezuela.
Mr. President.
Rubio would be.
You said earlier today that you weren't going to back Machado to come back and be the opposition leader in your Fox and Friends interview. And then you also mentioned the vice president of Venezuela. Are you going to work with the vice president of Venezuela, or how do you foresee the relationship
Well, I
going?
understand she was just sworn in, but she was, as you know, picked by Maduro. So Marco's working on that directly. He just had a conversation with her, and she's essentially willing to do what we think is necessary to make Venezuela great again. Very simple.
Mr. President, Colombian President Gustavo Petro, a couple weeks ago, he said he's got to watch his ass. And today he said he's not concerned about anything happening to him in the aftermath of this operation. So just what your message is
Well,
about
he
that.
has cocaine mills. He has factories where he makes cocaine. And yeah, I think I stick by my first statement. He's making cocaine. They're sending it into the United States. So he does have to watch his ass.
Mr. President.
Did you notify any members of Congress in advance?
Marco, do you want to talk about that? Because you were involved in it.
Sure. We call members of Congress immediately after. This was not the kind of mission that you can do congressional notification on. It was a trigger-based mission in which conditions had to be met night after night. We watched and monitored that for a number of days. So it's just simply not the kind of mission you can call people and say, hey, we may do this at some point in the next 15 days.
Why not?
But it's largely a law enforcement function. Remember, at the end of the day, at its core, this was an arrest.
It's law enforcement
to
function.
indict
Okay, that's how you're getting around it. Okay,
and the
all
Department of
right.
War supported the Department of Justice in that job. Now, there are broader policy implications here, but it's just not the kind of mission that you can pre-notify because it endangers the mission.
If I can add one thing to that, Congress has a tendency to leak. This would not be good. If they leaked, General, I think it would have been maybe a very different result. But I have to say, they knew we were coming at some point, We had a lot of ships out there. They sort of knew we were coming. But Congress will leak, and we don't want leakage.
Mr. President.
You were one of the only people to watch this all play out live. What was Maduro doing when the U.S. forces entered what I assume would be his home? And also, was there any point where the U.S. was considering if Maduro pushed back or resisted killing Maduro?
It could have happened. It could have happened. He was trying to get into a safe place. You know what a safe place is, all steel. And he wasn't able to make it to the door because our guys were so fast. They went through the opposition so fast. And there was a lot of opposition. People were wondering, do we get them by surprise? Sort of surprised, but they were waiting for something. It was a lot of opposition. There was a lot of gunfire. You saw some of it today. But he was trying to get to a safe place, which wasn't safe because we would have had the door blown up in about 47 seconds, they say on average, regardless of how thick the steel was. It was a very thick door. It was a very heavy door, but he was unable to get to that door. He made it to the door. He was unable to close it.
So where is Maduro going to be?
Go ahead, finish.
Where is Maduro going to be in the time being right now? Do you know his exact
Well,
whereabouts?
eventually, ultimately, in the near future, he's going to be brought to New York.
And where is he going to be held? Where is he going to be held in New York? Do you know?
That's going to be up to the officials that do these things.
Mr. President, the U.S. has something of a mixed track record of ousting dictators without necessarily a plan for what comes afterwards.
Not with
Did
me,
that
though.
weigh on your decision
Well, that's
making?
when we had different presidents, but with me, that's not true. With me, we've had a perfect track record of winning We win a lot, and we win. If you look at Soleimani, you look at al-Baghdadi, you look at the.
This situation is very different than those situations. Yeah, that's those situations are not comparable. In those situations, you're trying to get a guy, and you just blew him up, which sort of mission accomplished. In this, you have conquered Venezuela, disrupted their government, created a power vacuum, created issues under U.S. law and international law to some degree. I don't think those situations compare very well. This could be much more dynamic.
Midnight Hammer was incredible. Right now, you wouldn't have peace in the Middle East. We have essentially peace in the Middle East because of that. If we weren't successful with Midnight Hammer, you wouldn't have peace in the Middle East. So, with me, you've had a lot of victory. You've had only victories. You've had no losses. Yeah.
Mr. President, how long do you expect the U.S. to run Venezuela, and how soon do you want the Venezuelan people to hold elections?
So I'd like to do it quickly, but it takes a period of time. We're rebuilding. We have to rebuild their whole infrastructure. The infrastructure is rotted. It's actually very dangerous. It's blow-up territory. Oil is very dangerous. It's a very dangerous thing to take out of the ground. It can kill a lot of people. It has killed a lot of people doing just that. The infrastructure is old. It's rotted. Much of it is stuff that we put there 25 years ago, and we're going to be replacing it. And we're going to take a lot of money out so that we can take care of the country.
Are you saying that Secretary Rubio and
Mr. President, China, Russia, and Iran have interests in Venezuela. How does this operation affect your relationships with them when it comes to the oil and drugs?
In terms of China and Russia, Russia when we get things straightened out. But in terms of other countries that want oil, we're in the oil business. We're going to sell it to them. We're not going to say we're not going to. In other words, we'll be selling oil, probably in much larger doses because they couldn't produce very much because their infrastructure was so bad. So we'll be selling large amounts of oil to other countries, many of whom are using it now, but I would say many more will come.
Are you saying that, Mr. President, are you saying that?
Mr. President, thank you. What is your message to the people of Venezuela today? Of course, the civilian population specifically, they have a lot of questions. What is your message to the people of Venezuela?
That you're going to have peace, justice. You're going to have some of the riches that you should have had for a long period of time. It was stolen from you. But you're going to have.
Well, I suppose on one thing that makes me somewhat happy is that, all things being considered, I guess I'm glad I'm an American because, if we're a bully, at least we have the power. So if might makes right, well, we got a lot of that going for us. This, I guess, is what happens when you spend $1 trillion on your defense budget. So it's like, well, yeah, I'm glad I'm an American and not so much a Venezuelan at the moment. I got that going for me. Streamers from Venezuela probably are having a rough time today.
Peace, and you're going to have safety, you're going to have justice, you're going to have a country, you're going to have a real country, you're going to have potentially a great country. If you go back 20 years, maybe even a little longer ago, that was a great country, and they destroyed it. Remember I said that if we lose this election, the United States will be Venezuela on steroids. That's what would have happened had we lost the election, the 2024 election.
I love how Trump somehow brings the election into this. That's a thing. That's amazing.
We suffered so badly when you look at the border from 2020. What they did, what Joe Biden administration did to our country should never be forgotten. But if we had to go through another year of that, we would be exactly where Venezuela was in terms. I used to say, if they win, we're going to be Venezuela on steroids, and that's what would have happened.
President, thank you. Are you saying that Secretary Hegseth and Rubio are going to be running Venezuela, and will you be sending in U.S. military
troops
to provide? They're going to be a
team that's working with the people of Venezuela to make sure that we have Venezuela right. Because for us to just leave, who's going to take over? I mean, there is nobody to take over. You have a vice president who's been appointed by Maduro. And right now she's the vice president, and she's, I guess, the president. She was sworn as president just a little while ago. She had a long conversation with Marco, and she said, We'll do whatever you need. I think she was quite gracious, but she really doesn't have a choice. We're going to have this done right. We're
That's pretty much true.
With Maduro, then leave like everybody else, leave and say, let it go to hell. If we just left, it has zero chance of ever coming back. We'll run it properly. We'll run it professionally. We'll have the greatest oil companies in the world go in and invest billions and billions of dollars and take out money, use that money in Venezuela. And the biggest beneficiary are going to be the people of Venezuela. And also, I can't stress this strongly enough, the people that got thrown out of Venezuela that are now in the United States, and frankly, some want to stay, and some probably want to go back. Yeah.
So, Mr. President, what's being done to protect Americans in the country, and were any of the detained Americans
Well, right now they're
arrested
very
last
protected
night?
because nobody's going to mess with us. They're very protected. The people of, and we let them know that you better not touch one of them.
Are you concerned that bad elements of the Maduro regime will remain in place?
Well, we know who they are. We're on them, and they're acting much differently now than they would have acted 2 days ago.
And what can you
Okay,
say
wait,
about
behind you, please.
Mr. President, why is running a country in South America America first?
Well,
That's a good question.
Because we want to surround ourselves with good neighbors. We want to surround ourselves with stability. We want to surround ourselves with energy. We have tremendous energy in that country.
Yeah, see, the energy thing, it's like, the energy thing really is, yeah, we're doing it just to get control of their oil supply. I mean, is that really what it boils down to? Yeah, probably is what it boils down to. I mean, yeah.
It's very important that we protect it. We need that for ourselves. We need that for the world. And we want to make sure we can protect it.
Mr. President,
Yes, sir. Please, go ahead.
Yeah, is there a message here for Cuba and Diaz-Canel?
Well, Cuba's an interesting case. Cuba is, not doing very well right now. That system has not been a very good one for Cuba. The people there have suffered for many, many years. And I think Cuba is going to be something we'll end up talking about because Cuba is a failing nation right now, very badly failing nation. And we want to help the people. It's very similar in the sense that we want to help the people in Cuba, but we want to also help the people that were forced out of Cuba and living in this country. Do you want to say something about that, Marco, please?
Well, I mean, I just gave you a statement a few minutes ago about, when the president speaks, you should take him seriously. So suffice it to say, Cuba is a disaster. It's run by incompetent, senile men, and in some cases, not senile, but incompetent nonetheless. It has no economy. It's in total collapse. And by the way, they were, all of the guards that...
Are we going to conquer Cuba again? It's been a while since we conquered Cuba. It's been a while. Are we going to conquer Cuba? I mean, if they want to turn Cuba into a United States territory, I'm here for that. I've heard that Cuba's got some nice beaches and stuff like that. It could be good. Yeah.
Help protect Maduro. This is well known. Their whole spy agency, all that were full of Cubans. I mean, it's amazing. This poor island took over Venezuela in some cases. One of the biggest problems that Venezuelans have is they have to declare independence from Cuba. They tried to basically colonize it from a security standpoint. So, yeah, look, if I lived in Havana and I was in the government, I'd be concerned, at least a little bit.
Are you cutting off the oil flow to Cuba from Venezuela?
Well, the president already announced a week ago that anything that's sanctioned, it's sanctioned oil, it's not going to be allowed to get there. So that's an
The answer is yes.
Mr. President,
Is the U.S. aware of the location of opposition leader Machado, and have you been in contact with her?
No, we haven't. No, we haven't.
Mr. President, on Monday...
I think it would be very tough for her to be the leader. She doesn't have the support within or the respect within the country. She's a very nice woman, but she doesn't have the respect.
Mr. President, is it possible that the U.S. ends up administrating Venezuela for years?
Well, it won't cost us anything because the money coming out of the ground is very substantial. So it's not going to cost us anything.
So the U.S. isn't going to dedicate
any money
to...
Well, we want safety there. We want to be surrounded by countries that aren't housing all of our enemies all over the world. That's what was happening, and you don't want to have that. But we're going to be rebuilding, and we're not spending money. The oil companies are going to go in. They're going to spend money. We're going to take back the oil that, frankly, we should have taken back a long time ago. A lot of money is coming out of the ground. We're going to get reimbursed for all of that. We're going to get reimbursed for everything that we spend. So it's going to be a very important. It's going to be a very important. This is a very big evening that took place last night. We have to be surrounded by safe, secure countries, and we also have to have energy. Very important. We have to have energy that's real energy, not where they're getting 4% and 5% of the energy out of the ground. You take a look. It was such a disaster. So what's going to happen with Venezuela, I think, over the next period of a year is going to be a great thing. And the people of Venezuela will be the biggest beneficiaries.
Mr. President, U.S. military.
Mr. President, thank you. What did you last speak to Maduro about when you spoke? And is the
Well,
US
I don't want to
at
get
war
into
with
the
Venezuela?
conversations, but I did have conversations with him, and I said, you got to surrender. And I actually thought he was pretty close to doing so, but now he wished he did, yeah.
Mr. President, can you explain, you said that Maduro is responsible for drug trafficking. You recently pardoned the former president of Honduras who was convicted on many drug trafficking. Can you explain how these two situations are different? And would you ever pardon Maduro?
I endorsed, as you know, the winning president, the man who won in Honduras. I endorsed the man who won in Chile. I endorsed the man who won in Argentina. And we are doing very well with that whole group. What the man that I pardoned was, if you could equate it to us, he was treated like the Biden administration treated a man named Trump. That didn't work out too well for them. This was a man who was persecuted very unfairly. He was the head of the country. He was persecuted very unfairly. And there are a number of them. And we felt that it was a very unfair situation that happened to him. He's also a party member of the man who won. So obviously the people liked what I did. And one of the reasons that was done is because of the fact that the party in power felt very strongly that that man was treated very badly. I studied it very quickly, and then I studied it in great detail. I went to a lot of the people standing behind me, and they felt that that man was persecuted and treated very badly. That's why I gave him a pardon.
Mr. President, you referenced boots on the ground earlier. Can you just sort of button this up? Do you envision the U.S. military having a presence in Venezuela as the U.S. runs that country?
No, we're going to have a presence in Venezuela as it pertains to oil, because we have to have, we're sending our expertise in. So you may need something, not very much. But no, we're going to be taking out a tremendous amount of wealth out of the ground. And that wealth is going to the people of Venezuela and people from outside of Venezuela that used to be in Venezuela. And it goes also to the United States of America in the form of reimbursement for the damages caused us by that country. So I want to thank you all very much. Thank you. Do you have one? Yes, please. You were so nice before. I'm going to give you the final question. Go
Thank
ahead.
you, Mr.
Unless it's a
President.
bad question,
It's
in which
about
case
Putin.
I'll go one more. It's about who?
It's about Putin, if you want.
About Putin. Well, that's
Okay.
always nice.
You had a
to talk
phone.
about Putin.
You had a phone call with him on
Yeah.
Monday. Did he talk at all about Maduro? Did y'all talk about this?
No, we didn't.
And
We
then-
never spoke about Maduro.
Are you mad at him right now? I mean, there's this
I'm not
intelligence.
thrilled with Putin.
Are you mad at him? That's a very strange way to phrase that question in my mind. Are we doing like high school over here? Or are we like passing, notes? Are you mad? Yes, no. Okay.
I'm not thrilled with Putin. He's killing too many people.
There was that
I
intelligence.
thought that would be so. I settled 8 1/4 war. You know what the 1/4 was? Thailand and Cambodia. I did it again. They broke out, and I did it.
What wait a second. What are we talking about? What happened?
There's this
I'm not
intelligence.
thrilled with Putin. I'm not thrilled with Putin. He's killing too many people.
There was that
I
intelligence.
thought that would be so. I settled 8 1/4 war. You know what the 1/4 was? Thailand and Cambodia. I did it again.
I have no idea what he's talking about. What the hell is he talking about? Cambodia and Thailand. What wars what is he referring to? I've missed a memo, people. Help me out. What happened in Cambodia and Thailand? Help. They've been fighting? Okay, so how did he solve that? They've been fighting on the border? Cambodia and Thailand have been fighting? Oh, I guess I missed that memo. Okay, I missed the Cambodia and Thailand fight. Cambodia and Thailand have been having a little war. Okay, I missed that one. Sorry. Yeah, I missed the Cambodia Thailand thing. And he got peace. He got them to stop shooting at each other for a little while. Okay, fair enough. All right, I missed that kerfuffle. Okay, thank you for advising me. All right, cool. They started back again. Okay, so not so much. Okay, all right. What are Cambodia and Thailand angry at each other over? Is it just some bullshit border dispute about where a line is, or is it something else? Border shit? Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, fair enough. All right, carrying on.
They broke out, and I did it in about 5 hours, and I settled it. I'm giving myself 1 quarter, so I'm up to now 8 1/4. In other words, I settled the war, but then they broke out. They had a pretty bad breakout over the last 4 days. I got them to go back to peace, so I only give 1 quarter. I thought the easiest one would be, one of the easier ones would be Russia, Ukraine. It's not, and they both have done some pretty bad things. And look, that's Biden's war. That's not my war. But I want to stop the lives. Did you see where last month, 30,000, it was 27,000 the month before. 30,000, mostly soldiers, were killed this last month. 30,000. I want to stop that. You know, I got NATO to pay 5% instead of the 2% that they weren't paying. They weren't paying 2, now they pay 5. And
did he just change topics like 3 times in 3 seconds? Or 3 sentences, I apologize. Did he just completely change topics 3 times inside of 3 seconds? Because I can't follow it. Okay. All right.
we send them a lot of munitions, we send them a lot of things, missiles and various other things, a lot. And they pay. The United States is not losing money. We're probably making money on that. It's the last thing I care about. I just want to stop all those people. We're losing 25, 30,000 human beings. They come from 2 places that are very far away. But if I can stop, because...
What the hell is he talking about? What 2 places that are far away? What are you talking about?
It's something...
Ukraine and Russia? He can't possibly be talking about, unless he means far away from us. Because the way he said it, I thought implied far away from each other. Maybe I just misinterpreted what he meant. Because I thought he meant they were far away from each other. And I'm like, Ukraine and Russia are not far away from each other. They share a border. It's kind of one of the things that's in dispute. He meant far away from us. How do we get to Ukraine and Russia? We were talking about Thailand and Cambodia, weren't we? And NATO for some reason? And now we're talking about Ukraine. Okay. I'm a little grumpy.
I've been pretty good at doing deals, I guess. It's all a deal. Life is a big deal. But if I can stop that war and stop 30,000 young people, in addition to the fact that people are being killed in Kiev, people are being killed in other cities, a much smaller number, but they're being killed, viciously killed. So I'm not happy about it. I thought that...
As opposed to non-viciously killed? Okay.
Would be something that would get solved. We have Mr. Witkoff here. I think that we're making progress, but that's a war that should have never happened. If I were president, it would have never happened.
Wasn't the question, are you mad at Putin? How is any of this responsive to that?
Putin says it. Everybody says it. If I were president, that would have never happened. But I inherited that war. That was Joe Biden Zelensky and Putin. I came into the situation, and it's a mess. And I will say this, I watched an operation last night that was so precise, that was so brilliant.
What the hell?
It was incredible. If we had our people, like this general and our people involved, that war would not have gone on very long, that I can tell you.
You told me
that war, to use an old term, that war has become a bloodbath. And we wanted to get some. Thank you very much.
Are you concerned a rogue Venezuelan general can take over the country?
Can you talk about your conversation with the vice president?
Okay. Well, it got a little frantic over there. I don't know if that was like what you would call that, like power minute or something. It's like, how many things can I talk about in 60 seconds, like a power minute or something? That was a lot. Okay. Well, theoretically, that was a press conference to talk about Venezuela. And then I don't know, we got off track something and whatever. Well, the United States has effectively staged what would you call an external coup? Usually a coup is internal. Would you just call it a coup? I guess. The US has staged a coup and invasion, conquest, and yeah. And okay. And we attacked some things that look suspiciously like military bases, but are not, and it's not war, and a whole bunch of other things. And the legal issues are profound on a whole number of levels. So not that anything will happen as a result of it, I'm sure. In the end, probably nothing will happen. Congress will probably bloviate as they do. There might be a hearing. No one's going to really care. Congress might try to pass a resolution. No one cares. The UN might try to do some bullshit. We're going to veto it anyway. The International Criminal Court's going to be pissy, but we don't get consent to their jurisdiction anyway. And basically, we have all the power, and so we just win. And so, there's that. And part of this, of course, is Congress's fault for giving the president so much power. But this is not military. This was something else. Although we do recognize Venezuela as a country, right? We do recognize that Venezuela is a place that exists, right? So no matter what we did enter their airspace and like bomb their stuff that was in their land. So like that seems somewhat aggressive, but apparently not a military operation. So I suppose Russia can fly its fighters or bombers over the United States and drop ordnance on the United States, and it isn't necessarily an act of war because they're trying to extradite somebody, whoever that would be. So it's not really a military thing, don't you know? Okay, I have questions. I have questions. Yeah, it's military, but it's not a war. See, the thing is, like, can you apply that logic? Do you really believe that? This is what I'm trying to say. Do you really believe it is an operation, but not a war? Like, do you really believe? This is what I'm trying to say. Okay, let's try to be consistent about this. Do you really believe this? Do you really believe? Let's suppose that there's someone that Russia wants to extradite who's currently in the United States. I don't think that's too difficult to believe. I'm sure there is such a person. I don't know who they are, but let's just assume they exist. It's a reasonable assumption. There's someone in the United States that Russia wants to extradite, and for whatever reason, the United States government isn't cooperating. Okay, so then if Russia uses its fighters and bombers and troops and bombs our ports and our bases and lands boots on the ground and puts this person on a plane and flies it back to Russia, that's not a military operation? Is that what we're going with? That's not a military operation? So that wasn't an act of war? Really? Is that really do you really believe that? Are you sure? Because I don't think you believe it. I think you're saying some bullshit. We've done it before. I'm not saying we haven't done it before. I'm saying to say it's not military is some bullshit. Because, like, are you really willing to follow that logic all the way through? Again, like, just create the factual. There's someone in the United States that Russia wants to extradite. The United States government, for whatever reason, doesn't want to extradite them. So Russia the Russian DOJ equivalent decides to ask their Department of Defense equivalent for a little help, and then Russia comes over here with some bombs and planes and bombs a few military facilities and lands and puts this guy on a plane and flies him away. Is that not a military operation, really? Okay. I mean, if that's the way you want to do this, but I don't think you believe that, and I know you don't believe that, and now you're trying to figure out why it's different. Now you're desperately trying to figure out why it would be different. I know what you're trying to do now. You're desperately going to try to figure out why it's different. Good luck. The Russian example involves an extradition treaty? No? Well, it's neither here nor there. Right? Because it's neither here nor there. I don't think. First of all, Russia wouldn't extradite its own person anyway. Yeah. We are at war with Venezuela. Russia would internally sell it as something other than war. Of course, Russia would internally sell it something other than war. That's what they've been doing to Ukraine. That's what they've been saying about Ukraine this entire time. Russia has never claimed they're at war with Ukraine. Russia's always claimed it's a police action. Okay, do you agree? Do you believe it's a police action? Do you think that's true? I mean, it's like, okay, yeah. It's like, yeah, of course that's what's going on. Yeah, no such treaty or agreement exists with Venezuela head of state. Yeah, that's very much true. If Russia was trying to extradite, President Trump, yeah, let's assume that President Trump has committed crimes under Russian law. I don't think this is beyond the pale, at least as far as Russia's concerned. Let's assume that Russian law says that that President Trump has committed crimes. And let's assume that, they've asked for extradition, and not so much. We're not willing to extradite our own president. So Russia somehow manages to fly into the United States, bomb some facilities, kidnap President Trump, put him on a plane, fly him to Russia. Okay, we're saying that's not an act of war? Oh, that was just a police action? Oh, okay. Is that what we're doing? I'm having a hard time believing that scenario. I'm having a hard time being like, oh, that was just a police action. That wasn't an act of war. Your bombers and planes blew up a few of our military facilities. Probably took out to accomplish this objective. Probably took out Bowling and took out Andrews, and probably took out a couple of their facilities, and probably somehow managed to land its plane and somehow managed to attack the White House and get the president out and put him on a plane. This is not an act of war. Oh, okay. Is that how that works? I don't know, ma'am. I don't know. I'm having trouble with that scenario. Russia called it a special military action, not a police action. Whatever. By special, they mean not. Well, if it's special, it's not a military action. It's the equivalent of a police action. It's a label. It doesn't really matter. The label's not the thing. They said it didn't really count. It wasn't really war. Whatever bullshit they called it, right? Yeah. Yeah. So this is what I'm trying to say, man. I'm trying to apply some logic consistently. It's different when we do it is not really the greatest argument. Well, I suppose it depends on what you think makes an argument good. If it's different when we do it, if your basis for that argument is we got the gun, if your argument is political power flows from the barrel of a gun, if you want to quote a little, red book, political power flows from the barrel of a gun. If that's your argument, then I guess it's true because we win. So if that's your argument, I guess. Otherwise, yeah. So you want to quote a little red book over here? All right, that's fair. Fair enough. Fair enough. That's the only argument you can really do is like, we have the power, so we win. Might makes right. That's your argument. Hey, that's at least an intellectually honest argument. It's different when we do it because we have the power to make our will manifest. Fuck you. Fuck you, pay me. Basically. It's like, okay, that's the intellectually honest argument. So fair enough. And that's what Russia's basically doing in Ukraine. It's like, fuck you, pay me. Right? It's like, I have the power to make this happen. Sounds like, it's a pretty good argument for having a robust defense. I'm not sure we necessarily need to be bigger than the next 8 powers combined, but it's a good argument for having a robust defense so no one can fuck with us. Also, with 8 times the force, we can basically fuck with everybody because we can force project. We can just basically fuck with everybody. Not all at once, but, well, even all at once, we would basically get her to a tie. The rest of the world versus the United States in a military conflict, if you assume it's non-nuclear, you basically fight it to a tie. No one else can force project onto the United States. No one else has the troop carriers or the assets, and our Navy is huge. So, like, we can effectively take out the world's Navy. They're going to take out a lot of our Navy, but we'll be able to prevent them from attacking us and landing any craft, and any craft they could land anywhere. We have military facilities to attack that. We have got, assuming they could attack, get to any sort of shore, we have our bombers and planes and all the rest of it, so we can kind of take out any force from them. Anything that lands in South America, we have Panama as a choke point. So nothing from South America can get to us. First of all, they have to get through the jungle, which is a huge barrier. So there's that. Second of all, they have the choke point of Panama, so we can just choke them off at Panama, so that's not a problem. Anything north of Panama, it's like, we can deal with that. So, like, yeah, the U.S. versus the entire rest of the world, the entire rest of the world can't really do shit. The U.S.'s problem is going to be logistics. The U.S. could probably land some craft, even with the entire rest of the world. We probably could land some forces somewhere. The problem will be the supply lines, because, it's just going to be really difficult to maintain those supply lines. And of course, they have their native forces that will be able to keep us back. So, like, our ability, we can't really conquer very much, because we don't really have the ability to, we don't have the numbers to be able to maintain and, all the rest of it. So basically we fight, basically it's just a tie. Everyone back to their territory, because we can force project and they can't. So fuck you, But, yeah. The U.S. also has an armed population. This is a fair point. Yes, the U.S. also, the civilian population has a significant number of guns. So that too. Yes. So in addition to the military forces, our civilian forces are also well armed compared to the rest of the world. So we got that going for us. So yeah, attacking the United States is no bueno. What are they going to do? Land in Canada? Land in Canada. First of all, we're going to, be able to attack them anyway. Canada isn't going to be a threat, Canadian military. Not really worried about an attack from the north. Ooh, right. The forces north of Panama, like, we can probably manage that too. South of Panama, it's like, fuck you. You can't get through the jungle, and even if you can't get through Panama anyway. Fuck you. So it's like, it's a big tie. Hey, who burnt down the White House? That was at a different place and a different time, when the military posture of the respective countries was different. I think you're going to have a difficult time doing that again. Yeah. Things have moved on since 1812 quite substantially. Yeah. Yeah, it is impossible. It's impossible. The entire rest of the world combined couldn't attack the United States. Their biggest problem is just force projection. That's the biggest problem. If they could get their forces here, they might be able to, but they can't. Right? If they could get all their tanks and all their soldiers here, they probably could, but they can't. They simply don't have the force projection. The entire rest of the world has a baby navy. Our entire navy could kick the ass of many navies combined. Plus, if you get anywhere near our shores, it's not like our fighter. Well, first of all, you don't have to be particularly near our shores, but if you get anywhere even remotely close, we have aircraft that can, send torpedoes and all that shit too. So, it's not happening. It's not happening. So all the world's navies can fuck themselves in the U.S. attack. The U.S. attack versus the rest of the world. We'll lose a lot of forces. We'll be able to make landing somewhere. There's a lot of places to choose, so we got our choice. We're target rich, right? We got a wide range of choices. The problem is logistics. We simply will not be able to maintain our forces. We can't get them food and supplies. And of course, they have native armies that, as we conquer and we gain more territory, will become increasingly spread out. So, and then they'll be able to fight us back, because we can't really maintain anything. So, yeah. You say that, but we fed Berlin for how long? Yeah, but Berlin, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? This analogy doesn't work. First of all, the entire rest of the world, with the exception of Russia, had no problem with us doing this. So as we were launching our aircraft from many places, they weren't being shot down all the time. Second of all, feeding a city, or half a city at that, first of all, it was a hell of a logistics flex. So we shouldn't look past that. It was a hell of a logistics flex. So it was amazing. But feeding a half a city is not that big. I mean, it's big, but it's not that big. It's not a country. So, not really comparable. Also, the entire rest of the world wasn't fighting us. Also, the entire rest of the world, with the exception of Russia, was helping us. So, it doesn't quite work. If the Berlin airlift was being fought, if the counter forces to the Berlin Air Force was not only Russia, but all of Europe, it would have been a much harder flex. The Berlin airlift doesn't really count. Have I heard of nuclear, chemical, and biological? Did you hear the part where I said assuming non-nuclear? Did you hear that part? Assuming non-nuclear, and also assuming non-chemical and biological. Yeah, if you bring nuclear, chemical, and biological weapons into this, the discussion changes rapidly. So yeah, this entire discussion is premised on non-nuclear and also non-chemical and non-biological. Yeah, it's only conventional forces. If you're bringing the non-conventional forces into this discussion, the math changes substantially. Yeah, so, yeah. Yeah. So yeah, if we bring nuclear into this changes the math massively. Yeah. So this is bad pool. Yeah. Yeah. If we're doing nuclear, 5 billion people are going to die. About 98 to 99% of the population in the United States, Europe, and Russia is going to die. And it doesn't get much better. If we're throwing China into this, it doesn't get a lot better. And yeah, basically the survivors are The survivors are the southern hemisphere. The more southern, the better. So Argentina, Chile, the southern half of sub-Saharan Africa, Australia, the island chains like Indonesia, Philippines, Australia, New Zealand. Yeah, that's about it. It's not, the northern hemisphere is toast. The southern hemisphere has a chance. The biggest problem, of course, is going to be growing food for about 10 years because of the nuclear winter. It's going to dramatically lower food supply. The impact will be slightly less in the southern hemisphere than the northern hemisphere, but it's not great news. The disruption to supply chains also means that the means of agriculture are probably mechanical and manual, which, for a lot of the world is already what they're doing. So I guess they got that going for them. US's assets in Australia, so it's a target? Nah, probably not. It doesn't have any meaningful assets in Australia. Yeah, probably not. It's mostly a North America exchange. If you throw China in there, then China. So United States, basically all of Europe, Russia, China, India and Pakistan probably go at it. North Korea. Yeah, those are your participants. And it's bad news. I seem pretty confident that every country would attack each other. Well, any reason to make that conclusion? Yeah, there's a lot of reasons to make that conclusion. First of all, because the United States is part of NATO, an attack on the United States is deemed equivalent to NATO. So Russia probably has to, for sake of necessity, has to, at a bare minimum, not only attack the United States, but has to attack the UK and France because they're known nuclear powers. So if Russia is going to attack the United States, UK and France are supposed to attack back, so Russia has to attack them. So that's the end of the UK and the end of France. And they're also concerned about a military attack against their borders. So they're probably targeting all the other NATO assets, which is all the NATO countries, which is basically all of Europe. So all the major military bases in NATO are getting attacked. So that's basically all of Europe. So that's the United States, Europe, and Russia. And then India probably gets involved on our side. Pakistan probably gets involved on Russia or China's side. So the probability of an exchange between India and Pakistan is pretty high. And then China, if it's part of the party, if it's part of the party, then, otherwise not. But at that point, it doesn't really matter that much because once you've exchanged all the nuclear weapons between the United States and Russia, with or without, India and Pakistan going at it, the amount of stuff that's kicked up into the atmosphere is severe, not only from the nuclear weapons themselves, but perhaps even more importantly, the fires, because the nuclear weapons will set everything on fire, which will put unbelievable amounts of soot into the atmosphere. And because nuclear weapons eject their stuff so high, it ejects it into upper parts of the atmosphere where it takes much longer to fall out of the atmosphere. So because it's sitting up higher in the atmosphere. So you're ejecting a lot of soot and debris into upper parts of the atmosphere, wherein it's going to sit for the next 10 years. Okay, meanwhile, of course, trade has been completely disrupted because the United States, which is a major food supplier of the world, has just been destroyed. The United States is a significant supplier of food to the world. Ukraine is the breadbasket of Russia, has just been wiped out basically from the nuclear winter. So the food supply drops because you can't grow anything, because the amount of light that's coming in has been significantly impacted by the amount of soot and debris that's sitting in the upper atmosphere. So temperatures drop dramatically as sunlight drops dramatically. So that's not really good for growing, even assuming you could grow anything. You can't because of the temperature and stuff. And this is going to last for about 10 years. Now, this is more of a problem in the northern hemisphere than the southern hemisphere, but of course the winds move things around. So it's not like the southern hemisphere is non-impacted, because all that debris and soot that's in the northern hemisphere is going to make its way, although not completely, into the southern hemisphere. So the amount of sunlight that's coming in the southern hemisphere is going to be significantly impacted. Plus, of course, the radiation itself, which is no bueno, is also being carried by this. So that's what happens, right? So the impact of this is like 99% of life in the United States dies, mostly from starvation, because you can't grow anything. Likewise in Europe, likewise in Russia. And it gets darker after that. So estimate you're looking at about the loss of about 5 billion people or so, with the people that are able to survive being more people that live more primitively, who are able to live based on scavenging and limited growing in the southern parts of the southern hemisphere, which will be the least impacted. So that's sort of the scenario. It's not great. Yeah. It's pretty bad news. You might want to check your projections with ChatGPT. I'm telling you, man. It's not that you can't literally grow anything. I'm being slightly hyperbolic, but not by much. Right? It's not that you literally can't grow literally anything. It's that the decrease in sunlight will make photosynthesis less. So the amount you'll be able to grow is significantly less than you'll be able to now. Not to mention the radiation, which makes farming a bitch too. So yes, you would be able to grow some, but not very much. It will be colder temperatures, which isn't great for the farming. There's lower sunlight. So yeah, you might be able to grow some things, but not to any real degree. Your ability to grow will be marginal. Very marginal. And so you might be able to do some stuff, but there's going to be such a severe temperature drop. So take your pick. You either die from the nuclear explosion itself, or you die from the radiation poisoning, or you die from the temperature because there's no more heating. So you die from the temperature, or you die from starvation. It's basically sucks every possible way. It's not good news. I'm telling you, that's the effect of nuclear weapons. I'm telling you. Run it through your AI of choice. Which AI do you want me to run it through? I'll be happy to run it through an AI. You want me to run it through ChatGPT? You want me to run it through Grok? You want me to run it through Gemini? Yeah, I'm telling you. Which one do you want? I mean, this is basically the scenario. 5 to 6 billion people die of a combination of these things, and the people that tend to survive are going to be the people that tend to be in the most southern in the southern hemisphere, because they will be the least impacted by the nuclear winter. No one outside peace activists are making claims like that. All right. Well, which AI do you want me to ask? You want me to ask Grok? You think Grok is reliable? I could ask Grok. We could ask Grok if you like. You want to see what Grok says about it? Yeah, let's ask Grok. All right. Assume a full nuclear exchange between the USA and Russia. Make projections for crop growth and animal survival based on foraging. For, let's say, 10 years post-exchange. Describe likely impact on deaths based on starvation. Impact, describe survival rates in the northern rates, and which countries are least likely to be impacted from the resulting nuclear winter and radiation poisoning. Let's take a look at that. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah. 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 Yep. This is kind of looking like what I said so far based on the way it's thinking. It's basically tracking what I just said. In a hypothetical full-scale nuclear exchange between U.S. and Russia involving thousands of warheads and injecting approximately 150 teragrams of soot into the atmosphere, that's not good. From widespread firestorms, a severe nuclear winter will ensue. Global average surface temperatures could drop by up to 15 degrees centigrade. That's pretty bad. With the most intense cooling in the first 1 to 2 years and effects persisting for over a decade. Oh, that's kind of like what I said. Solar radiation will be reduced by about 130 watts per meter squared, leading to diminished photosynthesis, shorter growing seasons, and altered precipitation patterns, particularly in the northern hemisphere. Well, that sounds like a lot like what I just said. Sounds pretty close to what I was saying. Crop production would collapse dramatically due to combined effects of cooling, reduced sunlight, and drought-like conditions. In the first 3 to 4 years post-exchange, global calorie production could plummet by about 90%, with mid to high latitude regions, North America, Europe, Russia, experiencing near total failure of stable crops. That sounds a lot like what I was saying. Tropical and subtropical areas might see reductions of 50 to 70%, though catastrophic. Frost-resistant crops like potatoes and barley could be prioritized in surviving agriculture, but overall yields would remain suppressed. Recovery would begin gradually after 5 years after soot settles and temperatures rise, but full pre-war levels might not return for 15 years, with ongoing disruptions from ozone depletion and increasing UV radiation further harming post-winter harvests. Over a 10-year horizon, global crop output might average 40 to 60% below normal, assuming no major adaptations like rapid relocation of farming. Wild and domestic animal populations would face mass die-offs from habitat destruction, food scarcity, and extreme cold. Ecosystems would collapse, with forest and grasslands dying back due to lack of sunlight and freezing temperatures, eliminating prior foraging sources. Northern mammals, like deers and bales, might initially tolerate the cold, but would starve as vegetation falls, leading to 80 to 95% mortality in the affected biomes. Aquatic species could fare slightly better, though marine fisheries might decline 30 to 40% from reduced productivity. Resilient opportunistic species like fungi, insects, and some rodents could proliferate. Oh, good. We might be eating the bugs. That's good news. Over 10 years, animal populations might rebound slowly in warmer southern latitudes, but global biodiversity loss would be profound, with foraging results insufficient to sustain pre-livestock or wildflowers, perhaps only supporting 10 to 20% of the original biomass. Well, that sounds also like a lot like what I was saying. This sounds suspiciously similar to what I was describing. I think Grok and I are kind of on the same page. The nuclear winter would trigger a global famine, with food calorie availability dropping so sharply that most nation populations will fall below basic metabolic needs by year 2, assuming disrupted trade supply chains. Initial direct casualties from blast heat and acute radiation might be 90 to 100 million, but starvation would dominate, which is kind of what I was saying. Starvation's the big problem. Projections estimate 5 billion deaths. Well, Jesus Christ, isn't that exactly the number I said? Didn't I say 5 billion? Oh my God. Grok says 5 billion. Oh my God. It's almost like it's the same number. Wow. Ask how likely a full nuclear exchange would be? Okay. I'll ask it. Okay, I have to ask it a modified question. Yeah, this is slightly the wrong question. Okay, let's rephrase the question. If there is a nuclear exchange between the USA and Russia, how likely is it to be a full nuclear exchange, right? Because this is the premise, right? So this is the real question. If there's a nuclear exchange, what's the probability it's a full nuclear exchange, right? Because that's the entire premise that we're working from. So let's ask that question. Could have easily asked the effects of U.S. and Russia have full exchange of all non-nuclear weapons and gotten similar results? No, non-nuclear weapons would not have anything like these results. It wouldn't be even close. Assuming you don't also mean biological, assuming you are excluding biological and chemical, it wouldn't be even close to this scenario. In a hypothetical exchange between Russia and US, defined here as a initial use of nuclear weapons, the likelihood of escalation to full nuclear exchange is highly uncertain and debated. There's no definitive probabilities, but assessment from think tank simulations doctrinal analysis point to a substantial risk, also framed as plausible, significant, or high. Yeah. Real-time chaos, chain of command, and incompetent intelligence could lead to overreactions. Tactical strike might be mistaken for a precursor, prompting launch on warning protocol. Expert opinions vary, with quantitative estimates differing by orders of magnitude to near certainty in some scenarios. About 2/3 of experts believe limits can be maintained through post-first use. Full exchange might be avoided in 60-70% of cases. Others argue escalation is inevitable due to uncontrolled dynamics. Simulation doctrine suggests higher than 50% chance. Overall consensus, the risk is not zero and could be substantial, 20 to 80%. Yeah, so like, it's not great. It's not great. It's not good news. But everything I said was accurate. Everything I said was accurate if you assume a full nuclear exchange. And if you have any nuclear exchange, the probability of it escalating to a full nuclear exchange, I think, is pretty high. Because it's like once you cross that barrier, it's like it's pretty hard for it to stop. It might stop, but I wouldn't bank on it. And also, then you also are banking on what every other player in the game is doing, right? Because you not only have the U.S. and Russia in this exchange, right? You also have to worry about what every other nuclear power is doing. How does China react? How does North Korea react? How does France react? How does the UK react? And so forth and so on, right? And there's a lot of ways for it to go catastrophically wrong in a hurry. So that's what I have to say about that. So why is it full nuclear exchange? We were just talking about it. It was just a topic that came up. And it's like, yeah, I don't know. We're just having a discussion. I don't know. We're just talking. Well, in any fine ways, this has been fun. I'm going to sign off. I got to hit the gym early today because I got to do some business and they might actually be closed by the time I get there. But I'll talk to you later. Until later, my friends, I hope all's well. Cheers for now and goodbye.